In a paper written in 1959, physicists Philip Morrison and Giuseppe Cocconi had speculated that if any extraterrestrial civilizations were to contact the Earth, they would use radio frequencies at or around the 1420 MHz mark. This is the natural frequency of hydrogen, which is the most abundant element in the universe and is therefore the most likely for any extraneous societies attempting to contact their cosmic associates. More than a decade later, Ohio State University assigned the Big Ear to the causes of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. Jerry Amon was an astronomer working at the Big Ear, and in 1977, while analyzing an incredible amount of radio data, he noticed a series of data values possessing vast amounts of intensity and precision, the likes of which he or anyone else working at the observatory had ever seen before. He wrote down a phrase of exclamation by the signals, and thus the famous WOW signal was born. Amon and his colleagues, to their knowledge, had just discovered the first sign of life outside the Earth's atmosphere. Now, it should come as no surprise that in the end, nothing came of the signal. Yet. You see, we don't really know what exactly created the signal, and Amon noted that there were multiple indications in the readings that suggested an artificial origin. Although there have been no confirmations that the signal is of synthetic genesis, there isn't anything that would discount it as such. Due to the fact that the Earth rotates at roughly 1,000 miles per hour, the fixed observatory would not be able to detect more than 72 seconds, or less than 10 seconds, worth of modulation. It can now be stated that if we were able to receive more of the signal, a more precise determination of origin could be made. It also rose and fell in intensity, which is not characteristic of atmospheric interference, say from a military radio station, or a kitchen microwave, which confirms Amon's hypothesis that the signal did indeed emanate from deep space. In 2012, the Arecibo Radio Observatory beamed a reply composed of 10,000 Twitter messages referring to the original signal. Yeah, not really a good first look. Since then, SETI has increased its search efforts, and many a time have we found ourselves in the midst of possible contact with another civilization. As far back as the ancient Greeks, philosophers and astronomers like Democritus and Epicurus speculated that it would be statistically unlikely for Earth to be the only planet to harbor life. They compared the concept to a single spear of wheat growing in a vast field. More than 2,000 years later, famed mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss introduced his method of communication with extraterrestrial beings. He himself was convinced that Mars harbored intelligent life, and suggested that the best way to set up communication with the Martians was with a giant right triangle to represent the Pythagorean theorem. This was to be made out of wheat or pine trees in the Siberian tundra, large enough for possible life on Mars or the Moon to see. In 1896, French inventor Charles Cros proposed a giant mirror designed to focus light at Mars or Venus. He stated that we could use a Morse code-like visual language to liaise with any sapient beings there. Unsuccessful attempts notwithstanding, we never made communicatory contact with life in our solar system. The real attempts begin with the invention of wireless communication. Early wireless transmissions came in the form of radio waves, and after Thomas Edison patented the first practical means of radio communications, the Earth was no longer a silent speck in the dead of night. While there wasn't much effort put into the sending of messages via radio into outer space, the majority of resources were poured into listening devices. Titans of physics and invention like Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein were adamant whether at some point or another, life on other planets exist. In 1937, Tesla, a pioneer in radio technology, stated that he believed to be the first Earthling to communicate with another civilization. He supposedly picked up powerful signals not unlike those of the WOW transmission, and surmised that the complete accuracy and precision of the readings could only be sent by sentient beings. In the modern day, observatories and radio stations are designed specifically for the goals of SETI, and things like the enormous Square Kilometer and Allen telescope arrays are nearly entirely dedicated to the ongoing hunt for intelligent life in the universe. On the 19th of October, 2017, astronomers stationed at the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii received information about an object roughly 1/5 the distance from the Earth to the Sun. By the time of its discovery, it was already on its way out of the solar system, having passed by the Sun approximately 40 days prior. With its slingshotted path around the Sun and fairly ordinary size, Oumuamua is deemed to be a comet. However, doubts began to arise when the article was discovered to not possess any kind of nebulous coma, which ruled out the possibility of the object being a comet, leading many to declare it an asteroid. However, it moved unusually quick for an object propelled by non-gravitational means, covering some 200,000 kilometers every hour. Oumuamua's trajectory around the Sun was also suggestive of extrasolar origin, with a presumed start around the star Vega. Once cometary outgassing and gravitational movement was ruled out, there was only one theory left. A small but substantial number of people believed that there was a means of artificial momentum for Oumuamua, or in other words, Oumuamua was an interstellar satellite. With no discernible fuel-powered engines, some suggest that Oumuamua used controlled solar sailing as a means of propulsion. Light from the Sun would reflect against mirrors on the back of the probe, releasing radiation and thus pushing it forward. On the other hand, Oumuamua, as we observed it, emitted zero radio signals, and there was nothing that could be even misconstrued as an attempt at communication. Before we could further analyze its attributes, it had sailed off into the galaxy. Now, that was something of galactic happening, but there have been multiple documented cases of peculiar incidents that occurred right here in our atmosphere. One such series of events were those of the USS Princeton encounters. In short, a US aircraft carrier patrolling the Gulf of Mexico detected the radar footprint of multiple unidentified flying objects over the ocean. All were observed to perform physics-defying maneuvers, completely ignoring the effects of gravity as we know it. Erratic vertical and horizontal movements and rapid acceleration with no discernible means of propulsion puzzled all who saw it. Many who spotted them on radar blamed it on the newly upgraded sonar systems, but as it happens, fighter jets were sent out to scout for these objects, and many pilots made confirmed visual contact with the UFOs, describing them as helicopter-sized capsules in the shape of a Tic Tac mint. After videos of these were posted on various social media sites, the United States Department of Defense confirmed the videos uploaded to be real events captured aboard the vessels operated by the United States Navy. Because of the UFOs being pretty much unexplainable, rampant speculation about extraterrestrial beings began to flood the internet. The only thing is, we simply don't know. At the moment, nobody on Earth can either confirm nor deny the declarations of Tic Tac-shaped alien spaceships haunting the seas. On the 19th of September, 1976, at least 4 civilians in the Imperial State of Iran reported what appeared to be a bright, scintillating light in the night sky. Lieutenant Yadi Naziri and one other officer were dispatched to investigate the claims. When he reached the heart of Tehran, Naziri reported that all of his instruments in the vehicle he was riding in suddenly went dark and subsequently lost communications with home base. Upon returning, all of the instruments came to life, and everything appeared to be working as if nothing had happened. As the reports gained more and more traction, an F-4 Phantom fighter jet was dispatched in order to intercept the bright object. Squadron Commander Major Parviz Jafari stated that the light was flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue lights, so bright that I was not able to see its body. Jafari then reported that the light suddenly flew at him, as if it were a missile. As he and his weapons officer attempted to escape the perceived collision, Jafari tried to fire a defense missile, which failed to deploy. It was also at this time that both pilots noticed that all communications were down, and so in order to avoid possibly fatal confrontation, they frantically retreated. As the jet moved further and further away from the light, instruments began to light up once again, and as soon as radio communications were re-established, they were told to return, to get back. In the process of doing so, Jafari looked to his left to see a primary, diamond-shaped thing up there, and that another bright object came out of it and headed directly toward the ground. Both he and his officer anticipated an explosion, which never happened. Instead, Jafari claimed that it seemed to slow down and land gently on the ground, radiating a high, bright light. Upon returning to camp, the jet, like the Jeep before it, returned to complete normalcy. When investigations resumed the following morning, no semblance of wreckage was ever found, and the only information anyone was able to gather was that nearby home occupants reported a loud noise and a bright flash in the middle of the night. To this day, professors and basement ufologists alike fail to delineate a definite conclusion. Establishing contact with aliens can happen in one of two ways, through them looking for us, or us looking for them. The former is pretty much out of our control, but the latter is. A human life is extremely short on the timescales of the universe, and the vast distances and time it would take to go between possible life-harboring planets well exceeds the life expectancy of a modern-day human being. For example, the nearest star system that contains an Earth-like planet that might have life on it is that of Proxima Centauri. Its exoplanet Proxima Centauri b is roughly 4.2 light-years away from Earth at any given moment. If we say that a venturing spaceship can travel at just 10% the speed of light, a speed very attainable by modern methods, it would take roughly 25,000 years to reach it, or about 800 human generations. So the only way to establish contact with alien societies is through radar communications, which does indeed travel at 100% the speed of light. In this way, it would take only 4 years to connect with any listening civilizations in Proxima Centauri. In radar, there are two ways to go about it. One is with an omnidirectional transmission sent by various observatories around the globe, and the other is to send a single beam of information. This would be much cheaper than the globular broadcast, and you would be able to send much stronger signals, but the issue lies within the chance of one lone signal reaching a listener. It would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Because the first option is totally cardioid, it doesn't matter where the aliens are. If they are there, in the signal's lateral plane, they will receive it. Right now, both methods are being employed by SETI, and there's no telling which will be the one to discover life outside of Earth. Regardless of how long we search, or how we go about it, the universe is simply too large for even the most complicated computers to comprehend. Searching the universe for one planet with life is more like finding a proton in the whole of Staten Island. Personally, I would like to believe that Earth is not alone in the vast expanses of the universe, that someday, intelligent life will be seen everywhere we look. But, until direct communication with aliens is established, the human endeavors of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations will continue.